All right, we're going to do something today called deriving the quadratic formula. And it's not something I teach all of my classes, but enough of them that I wanted to put this on here, and I want you to think about how we go about doing this. It's kind of a handy thing to know. And we're going to use completing the square, which we've been working on, to derive the quadratic formula. And to do that, we're going to start off with the standard form of a quadratic with variables for our terms. So we're going to say ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So if we wanted to derive the quadratic formula, if we want to complete the square with this, we've already learned that the first thing you do is you move the constant to the other side. So if we move the constant to the other side here, we get ax squared plus bx equals negative c. Right? There's nothing really weird about that. It's just that we have letters instead of numbers. So we moved our c to the other side, our constant to the other side, and it became a negative c. So the next thing we do is we divide by the coefficient of x squared. Well, in this case, the coefficient of x squared isn't a number, it's a letter. So we're going to divide everything by a. When we do that, we get x squared plus b over a times x is equal to negative c over a. Nothing different than we did in all the rest of our completing the square problems, except that we have letters. So what's the next step? We take the coefficient of x. In this case, that's b over a. We have it. So that gives me b over 2a. We take that term and we square it. That gives me b squared over 4a squared. And we add it to both sides. Well, if I add b squared over 4a squared to both sides, I now have x squared plus b over a x plus b squared over 4a squared is equal to negative c over a, that's what I already had, plus b squared over 4a squared. I added those together. Right? So I'm just completing the square. The only difference is that this time I have letters, which means the next step is to factor this trinomial. So x, this sign, it's a plus, so this is a plus. What I had before I squared it, so b over 2a. And that quantity is squared. We completed the square. That was the whole point. Is equal to. Now, on the other side, in this case, I need a common denominator. My common denominator has to be between a and 4a squared. So we're going to use 4a squared as our denominator. 4a squared and 4a squared. Well, I don't have to change this b squared. It's already got the right denominator. But I'm changing a to 4a squared. So I'm going to multiply this negative c by 4a. So now I'm going to have negative 4ac on that particular side. All right, now let's turn this into one fraction on this side. Let's not change this in this step. We'll just leave it like it is. So I have x plus b over 2a quantity squared is equal to, and maybe it won't bother you too much if I reverse these so that my positive term is in the front. So I'm going to make this b squared minus 4ac all over 4a squared. And I can do that. They have the same denominator, so I can add the numerator and leave that denominator just like it was. All right, so now what do I do? Well, the next step in completing the square is to take the square root of both sides. So the square root of x plus b over 2a squared is x plus b over 2a. And when I take the square root of the other side, I get plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 4a squared. Completing the square. The only difference is I've got a whole bunch of letters. Move your b over 2a to the other side. X equals negative b over 2a plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. Now, I'm separating this fraction. I can't take the square root of b squared minus 4ac, but I can sure take the square root of 4a squared, because the square root of 4 is 2, and the square root of a squared is a. So now I have this over 2a. Well, look what happened here. Both of these have the same denominator, which means I have solved for x, and I can make this one fraction. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That is the quadratic formula. Memorize it. It will become your friend over the next few lessons. X equals, we usually say opposite b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. The quadratic formula.